truth waits. The soul remembers. Justice comes.
What happens to the souls of those who committed the worst horrors? I'm not talking about common mistakes, but real monsters, killers, maniacs, tyrants like Hitler. Where do their souls go after death? Is there any kind of justice or meeting with the truth on the other side? Edgar Cayce, known as the sleeping prophet of the 20th century, left us thousands of mysterious answers, revelations made in a trance state. Among them are deep explanations about this topic. Stay until the end of this video and discover a summary of the most striking teachings. You'll never see these questions the same way again. The first shock Cayce gives us is simple. No one disappears into the void. Death, according to his readings, is not the final door, but a bend in the road. When crossing it, even the cruelest soul is pulled into a space of absolute truth, a vivid mirror where every action returns as a direct sensation. The moment the last heartbeat stops, those who spilled blood feel the weight of the fear they caused. Those who crushed wills experience, in ethereal flesh, the anguish of those they tried to dominate. This meeting is not a torture show, but a mathematical demonstration of cause and effect. The consciousness, once addicted to excuses, loses all polish. All that remains is the clear reflection of what really made its own heartbeat. Imagine facing the world through the eyes of those you hurt, unable to look away, no alibis, no digital distractions. For Hitler, for example, this would mean feeling one by one the terror, physical pain, hunger, and despair of millions. Not in a fast-forward series, but as simultaneous waves, overlapping and heavy. According to Cayce, this exposure serves to break the illusion of distance. Once the damage is seen, the next step begins, which he called vibrational analysis. The soul assesses how far its frequency has drifted from the original harmony. Anger, pride, hardened guilt form dense knots that literally weigh on the energetic fabric of being. The greater the mismatch, the more urgent the need for adjustment. And here comes the key question. Will the soul accept the lesson or try to run from itself? Running away seems easy when you're used to controlling others, but in this scenario, there are no side doors. Cayce's mirror reflects everything back. Some consciousnesses react with fierce denial. They try to erase memories, drown in hatred, create fantasies of non-existent power. The result is vibrational isolation. The more they resist, the more they shut themselves in bubbles of torment that feel like endless nightmares. In these gray zones, there are no external demons whipping the guilty. It's the mind itself, replaying memories like a broken record. Others, touched by the smallest spark of empathy, start to admit mistakes. And this tiny regret works like a crack in a block of ice. With each flash of understanding, new fissures open until the initial rigidity melts into fluidity. That's where reincarnation comes in as a practical lab. Cayce describes this return not as artificial punishment, but as a hands-on lesson. The soul chooses, or is guided to, contexts that perfectly reflect the lessons it missed. Someone who ruled with tyranny might be reborn in an environment where none of their voices carry weight, learning firsthand the frustration they imposed. Someone who killed on impulse might face a short life marked by debilitating illnesses, feeling the fragility they disregarded. The mechanism sounds harsh, but carries healing precision. No one suffers randomly. Every challenge carries a hidden code pointing to balance. When a person realizes this, they stop blaming cruel fate and start decoding the manual of the heart. Still, some souls repeatedly reject the call and keep sowing chaos. Cayce warned that after many spiraling down turns, fragmentation happens. Picture a colored crystal thrown to the floor. Pieces shine separately, unable to form a whole image. On the spiritual level, these shards are disconnected impulses, sudden rage, addiction, sadism, that may influence future incarnations chaotically. Each fragment holds partial memory, creating individuals who seem born with empty places for remorse. However, no shard is lost forever. When a sincere act of compassion crosses the path of one of these beings, a luminous glue starts gathering the pieces, praying for an enemy, helping someone who will never repay, forgiving without public applause. All this sends threads of light traveling through dimensions, rescuing shards one by one. Maybe it sounds too idealistic. Then look at everyday life. Violent neighborhoods where social projects cut crime, former addicts who become mentors, countries turning battlefields into peace memorials. Under every tangible change vibrates the same law Cayce revealed: conscious interaction, gradual transformation. When someone decides not to repeat the cycle of hatred and responds to brutality with firmness, but without revenge, they open a crack where light escapes. This opening doesn't disappear, it echoes, inspiring chain reactions that cold statistics can't detect, but life stories prove. And the victims? Cayce never downplays them. He emphasizes that repair happens on multiple levels. Many times the wounded soul agrees, on deep planes, to meet its aggressor again in a new lifetime to complete the equation. This doesn't mean reliving the nightmare, but participating as a healing agent. The offender, now vulnerable, recognizes in the old victim's eyes the compassion once denied. This role reversal seals the lesson for both and dissolves karmic debt. Even those who refuse direct reunion receive vibrational compensation, support from spiritual guides, chances for accelerated growth, access to intense love experiences that soften old scars. If these ideas spark some insight, share your thoughts in the comments. Every story is a valuable piece of the collective mosaic. Maybe your question is the key to an answer someone else has been seeking for years. And if you feel connected, hit the subtle subscribe button and let this conversation come back to you when new topics arise. Sharing knowledge isn't vanity, it's the fuel for evolution. Before we wrap up this part, try a simple exercise. Close your eyes for a few seconds and bring to mind someone who stirs anger or fear in you. It can be a historical figure or someone close. Take a deep breath and imagine a golden thread connecting your heart to theirs. In this tunnel of light, send the phrase, "May the highest truth reveal itself to us, nothing more." Then let go of the thread. This tiny gesture, repeated night after night, will teach you more about spiritual justice than 1,000 sermons. You'll feel, in your own skin, Cayce's mirror working in real time. In the next chapters, we'll follow in detail how the soul, faced with its reflection, chooses between two paths, hardening until ruin or bending until blossoming. We'll also see documented cases by Cayce of dictators reborn in extreme contexts to heal collective trauma. If this journey intrigues you, stay tuned. The mirror is just starting to reveal the deeper layer of the image. True confession begins when pride gives up lying to its own memory. But many stubborn souls ignore this invitation and slide down the slope of self-deception. Cayce described that if remorse doesn't arise after looking in the mirror, consciousness loses its dense cohesion, like drying clay cracking. At this stage, even reincarnated, the person carries internal cracks, flashes of cruelty without context, insatiable needs trying to cover old emptiness, bursts of fear that don't fit the present scene. Each rupture is a sign of a shard of the original crystal crying out for integration. Sometimes the process seems invisible, but leaves tangible traces in social patterns. Families repeating cycles of violence for generations. Communities stuck in loops of aggression. Cities where despair seems born with the sunrise. Seeing these scenes through Cayce's lens, we recognize echoes of fragmentation. Noticing these signs already creates the first chance for reversal. But practically, how does the universe provide glue for these shards? The most cited mechanism in Cayce's readings involves reincarnations designed as dynamic mirrors. Imagine a killer who died carrying intact fury. He might return as someone living in a civil war zone, where every corner recalls the terror he once spread. It's not divine cruelty. It's an educational immersion planned to place the soul before the raw effect of its old cause. If, amid this chaos, he discovers empathy by helping an injured child, he turns 1,000 karmic pages at once. That act creates a path that leads a fragment back to its original form, as if welded with the fire of compassion. And so, step by step, piece by piece, the lost crystal begins to reassemble. However, many refuse the lesson and stay stuck in denial life after life. Cayce tells of cases where, after many failed attempts, the soul becomes almost translucent, unable to hold identity, living in chronic confusion, and influencing anyone who crosses its vibrational field. That's when we see outbreaks of violence, with no obvious cause or addictions taking over people with balanced histories. Spiritually unanchored beings slip between dimensions, looking for hosts with emotional cracks to experience feelings they can no longer produce alone. That's why he suggested that prolonged thoughts of hate or extreme sadness act as open doors. Real protection doesn't lie in expensive amulets, but in consistent cultivation of simple joy, daily gratitude, and sincere friendships. This bright emotional field makes it harder for disturbed consciousnesses to get close and, at the same time, serves as a beacon for them to find their way out. This phenomenon explains why certain places, like hospitals and prisons, carry a heavy atmosphere. It's not superstition. There's a density of accumulated emotions, interrupted dreams, and silent regrets. People entering these places with an attentive heart can make a huge difference just by keeping a calm mind and wishing peace for strangers. A nurse softly singing while changing bandages, a volunteer reading stories to inmates without judging the past, a relative quietly praying in the waiting room. They all throw rescue ropes that go beyond the visible. You might never see official stats on how many crises these acts prevent, but Cayce would assure that on the hidden plane, these threads of tenderness weave strong bridges. The sleeping prophet also stressed the need for compassion toward ourselves. Some people carry light guilt as if it were a war crime, and because of that, they attract equally dark influences. When we recall old mistakes and genuinely forgive ourselves, we weaken low-frequency magnets. The practice might seem too simple, but it has already changed destinies. Individuals stuck in cycles of self-sabotage start noticing positive coincidences, doors opening, relationships harmonizing. According to Cayce, it's not some irregular magic, it's spiritual math responding to a new internal programming. Notice that none of this cancels responsibility for terrible acts. Justice exists, but it works like medicine, not a trophy of revenge. If someone destroyed lives, each lost life becomes a silent teacher on that offender's future path. The lessons come as forced empathy, identical physical pain, proportional humiliations, equivalent emotional losses. When the understanding finally blooms that every life is an extension of our own existence, collective wounds heal in sync. This is the climax of what Cayce called vibrational redemption, a catharsis where good and evil stop competing because only clear awareness of universal interdependence remains. This view even shakes up modern legal debates. If we truly got the cycle Cayce described, criminal laws would be redesigned to balance social protection and spiritual re-education, instead of betting everything on mechanical punishment. Some efforts already sense this logic, like restorative justice programs that bring victims and offenders together in supervised talking circles. Early results show significant drops in repeat offenses and high emotional relief for both sides. Even if they don't cite Cayce, they follow the same path he announced. Misunderstood and accepted evil loses its grip on both the individual and the collective. At this point, a simple action from you can expand these ideas. A single click on the like button helps the algorithm show this content to those who need to hear that light and shadow dance together without getting confused. If any part connects with your memories, share it in the comments. Personal stories feed the spark for those seeking answers beyond history books. Before we move on, try another quick exercise. Close your eyes and picture a public figure you consider unforgivable. Notice the emotions that come up: anger, disgust, sadness. Allow yourself to feel them for 3 deep breaths. On the 4th breath, see that person covered in a soft mist. Mentally say, "May truth reach you and transform you." Then, let the image go without expecting immediate results. Doing this doesn't justify crimes or ignore others' pain. It simply prevents your own energy from hardening into resentment, keeping you free to be a bridge, not a wall. In the next segment, we'll dive into karmic reconciliations that bring together old and seemingly incompatible souls, showing how everyday encounters carry invisible contracts capable of rewriting centuries of conflict. If this insight sparks your curiosity, keep the notification bell on and let the next part find you at the right time. See you soon, and may every line shared here echo in quiet acts of compassion throughout your day. The journey goes on, and the path becomes more delicate. Some souls, after refusing help life after life, reach a point where the central thread of consciousness starts to fray. It's like the inner flame, without oxygen, flickers and finally breaks into independent embers that no longer recognize the original fire. Cayce called this vibrational disintegration. He doesn't describe horror movie scenes, but a slow process where identity loses its sharpness. Fragments wander in the shadows, clinging to specific memories. A violent urge, an obsession with control, an unnameable fear. Each piece looks for fuel in the physical world to keep alive the spark of feeling it has left. That's why, when they find vulnerable human minds, they influence without the person realizing where the hostile thought or sudden addiction came from. It sounds like a legend script, but just look at life. Outbreaks of collective hate exploding in seconds, social media challenges encouraging absurd risks, massive financial scams ruining families. All this grows where there's a vibrational gap, deep lack, unresolved anger, a sense of emptiness. These feelings act like antennas picking up external temptations and echoes of scattered consciousnesses. Cayce, pointing out this diagnosis, doesn't plant paranoia. He offers an immunity map. The antidote isn't physical walls, but 3 accessible attitudes. First, emotional vigilance, recognizing when heavy emotions try to take the wheel. Second, immediate constructive action, turning toxic urges into useful gestures, stretching, drinking a glass of water, calling a friend. Third, remembering your origin, quietly saying that no opposing vibration defines who you are. These practices interrupt the transmission line and slowly drain the strength of the fragments. When a partly divided soul finds a steady focus of compassion, something surprising happens. It's like an ember touches a fresh breeze. Instead of dying out, it gathers courage to jump back into the original fire. Ordinary people witness small returns home every day without linking them to the spiritual plane. That addict who, after an honest talk and a hug, decides to seek treatment. The young woman about to give up who, after hearing a song sent by a stranger, looks for help. The aggressor who stops when seeing genuine tears. In these fleeting breaks, the shards recognize a reflection of light and turnaround. The more hearts ready to hold this clarity, the more returns happen. But empathy alone sometimes isn't enough. Prayer, understood as focused intention, steps in not to convince deities, but to tune in to the healing wave that crosses dimensions. Cayce described effective prayer as firm thought wrapped in genuine emotion, projected without attachment to a specific outcome. He said asking that the highest truth be done has more power than listing detailed wishes because it opens the way for solutions the limited mind can't yet see. Modern studies on heart coherence and electromagnetic fields suggest feelings of gratitude create ordered patterns that spread beyond the body. Maybe science is starting to measure what mystics have always felt. Balanced vibration changes the subtle fabric where fragments move. At the same time, karmic reunions stitch undone lines. 2 people bump into each other on the subway and instantly dislike one another for no reason. Months later, they become co-workers and discover shared challenges that force cooperation. This script repeats endlessly with variations, but the purpose is the same: to reforge pieces of a relationship broken by pain in another century. Sometimes, the final fix happens in 5 minutes of honest conversation. Other times, it takes decades, side by side, caring for a special child who depends on both. Every small victory, even if it escapes the news, influences many layers of reality. When an old enemy reaches out to someone they hurt and receives a smile without resentment, energy is released that once affected entire populations. That's why societies advance in waves of compassion after disasters, as if collective memory got a learning boost. The good news is there's no limited quota for reconciliation. You can start a similar process right now. Think of someone who constantly annoys you. Instead of repeating judgment, find a neutral or positive detail. How that person cares for their pet, the effort they put into a project, something. Grab that thread like pulling a silky start of a ball of yarn. Next time you interact, show respect for that detail. Maybe nothing changes immediately, but the seed has been planted. On an invisible level, it signals readiness to untie old knots. Small choices like this, repeated often, create harvests that our descendants will see as natural progress, without suspecting the silent sweat that watered it. Let's not forget the role of victims in this machine. Often, the wounded soul grows in such remarkable wisdom that they choose to come back as disguised teachers, showing compassion to those who once cast shadows. There are stories of devoted doctors who, in past life memory regressions, discovered they had been ruthless warriors, or pacifist activists who led violent invasions in past eras. The past doesn't define them, but serves as a foundation for a completely opposite commitment. When we internalize this possibility, the habit of labeling someone irredeemable ends. Instead, we start seeing stages of the same journey. And if there's still doubt about justice, just remember, the law of cause and effect is equal for everyone, including teachers. A fake act of kindness, driven by vanity, returns with harsh lessons that tear down masks. That keeps the game honest. There are no shortcuts. Every thought, word, and gesture sends a registered ticket that comes back to the source, stamped with confirmation. This reminder, far from scaring you, invites inner sovereignty. When you realize no external authority grants a purity diploma, the traveler takes responsibility for every step and discovers unprecedented freedom. That freedom grows when we share questions and experiences. A single comment may seem small, but it acts like a firework in someone's sky who's looking for direction. If this content helped clear any shadow, say which phrase resonated. Maybe someone else will find in your sharing exactly the missing spark. And if you want to get the next explorations without leaving it to chance, turn on the silent reminder. It only goes off when something truly new is ready to add value. Before we say goodbye, I suggest one last gesture. When you finish this video, look for something simple that needs care. A plant needing water, a glass left in the sink, an email waiting for a friendly reply. Spend 30 seconds on that task. Then, imagine this small act spreading like a wave until it reaches a lost soul seeking proof that beauty still exists. You'll probably never know who benefited, but you'll feel more whole, because being part of the invisible healing web always brings immediate meaning back to life. So we close this trail of 70 centuries packed into a few minutes. If Cayce's mirror left new reflections in your gaze, take them to the streets, to your table, to your next meeting. The material world and the spiritual world aren't separate continents. They're two sides of the same breath. Every choice, here and now, echoes in both. May the noise of the days never silence this certainty. See you soon, and may the light you hold tomorrow be even brighter than today's.